Morning. It is April 15th, and it's a Wednesday morning. And on Wednesdays here in Nowhere Village, we dive into the big talk of the week, the teaching of the week. Last week, we talked about our practices, and we were getting really practical, talking about the space and time for our practice, especially in this new reality that we're living in. What are the spaces where we show up for our practice? How can we make the most conducive to our practice? And what kind of rhythm and routine really works for us? How much time do we need to be devoting to it, and how regular? And so we were examining those questions last week. And this week is the beginning of us diving into why we do our practice. And as I talk about often, and we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks, the most important part of the practice comes, in a sense, from that why. It's our care. It's our dedication. It doesn't matter nearly as much whether you're doing yoga or you're doing qigong, whether you're doing this style of meditation or another. It really has to do with us being able to rally that energy of love, really. There's lots of different names for it, but what gets us up and helps us show up to the practice and then helps us let go of all the rest. And so the coordinates, what we'll be working on for the coming 9 weeks, and I'm already really enjoying exploring these questions with you, but these are 9 questions that help us uncover for ourselves, really, that energy of care. And we're sort of entering the love building from 9 different entryways, basically, and the energy that we access is sort of just different flavors or variations of care. We begin with our sources, and the first 4 weeks, the first kind of half of the time is really looking at different types of relationships that we have. And the first type of relationship that we're looking at is, what are the sources? Where did we come from? What are the sources for our experience? And what are the sources for life that we are choosing to show up and honor when we practice, that we need to come back into alignment with through our practices? And so that's what I'm going to talk about here for a few minutes. Our sources are real. And that's really important. And that what we're getting in touch with this week, what we're investigating for ourselves, is what is, in a sense, what is the most real in reality? What is the most original? And how can I get back in connection with that regularly? This is great news, because we're not trying to manufacture anything with our sources. They are. We're not trying to invent anything or manipulate anything. We just want to discover what is right here, right now, what is all the time. I'm going to share a lot of sources, my primary sources with you this week. I'm going to give you guys a bunch of these quotes that I'll be weaving through this talk, and also just a sense for where I come from and what my practices are. I'm not going to focus on that too much in the talk, because a lot of you know this stuff, but I will put it with the talk. And I will say that 2 sources that I'm going to be quoting really deeply today: Nisargadatta Maharaj. Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj is an Indian sage and non-dualist teacher who was teaching in the 1900s, in the last century. And I want to actually go ahead and start with a quote from him, but I will also be interweaving some passages from the Tao Te Ching, another really important primary source for me. So all of the quotes from Maharaj are in dialogues with students. He didn't write, he didn't sit and write, he sat and taught, and then people recorded it. So one of his students says, all teachers advise us to meditate. What is the purpose of meditation? He says, we know the outer world of sensations and actions, but of our inner world of thoughts and feelings, we know very little. The primary purpose of meditation is to become conscious of and familiar with our inner life. The ultimate purpose is to reach the source of life and consciousness. And so he talks about meditation in two ways, which is the meditation as the means to this greater end, right? Reaching the source of life, which he talks about a lot as really finding out that the source of life is within you. It's within each being. But he says along the way, meditation serves this more direct purpose, this more immediate purpose, right? That's our long-term goal. Our more immediate purpose is to simply become familiar with our inner world. And your inner world really, in so many ways, is the source of the outer world. Because check in right now. What does it feel like now to look at me and to hear my words, to be where you are? In the exercise we just did in meditation, what did it feel like to call your teacher, right? They seem like this outer source, but really what they're affecting is that inner world. All of us practicing social distancing and staying at home and sheltering in place or quarantining, whatever you want to call it, this very different reality where we are less engaged with that outer world. It reminds me so much of retreat, which I've been talking about a lot, which is the most conducive environment for meditation. And perhaps we are all, unbeknownst to ourselves, we've been thrust into a situation that actually will end up being very, very positive for this experience of learning about our inner world and learning about how it is responding all the time to the outer world. And as we become familiar with it, our ability to receive inner answers, to gather more and more clarity in our lives, to answer these big questions of life and let those answers lead us, right? This becomes available, and it is a practice. Your inner world is becoming more and more familiar to you. And along the way, you're getting closer and closer to that goal of realizing that the source of life is already always here. I'm going to read a little bit more from him. He says, the practice of meditation deeply affects our character. We are slaves to what we do not know. Of what we know, we are masters. Whatever vice or weakness in ourselves we discover and understand its causings and workings, we overcome it by the very knowing. The unconscious dissolves when brought into the conscious. The dissolution of the unconscious releases energy. The mind feels adequate and it is quiet. This is another really important piece. All of the teachers that I really revere and all of the traditions that have become very important to me, including the Tibetan Buddhist lineage that we sourced our meditation from today, the preliminaries, all of them involve inquiry. All of them involve this deep inner questioning where you show up to your teacher and you do this dialogue back and forth. So you start to uncover the truth. You start to back yourself into walls and realize where your perceived truths don't actually line up, and you let those go. But this process of of allowing ourselves to see the truth of things, which also means letting go of the untruth. It also means admitting, right? Admitting to ourselves our vice and weakness, as he says, or these mistakes that we've made. And it's very scary at first to do inquiry. Somebody wrote in, who's been coming in the afternoon classes, wrote in, on Monday afternoon and said, that was really hard. I had a lot of fear come up asking these existential questions. And I said, thank you so much for that. And we will be talking more and more about how to deal with challenging emotions in the coming weeks. But I will say that this is the process. And what I want to offer in this talk is a reconnection to sources which help guide us as we do this and help remind us that we're on the right path, even if it feels a little scary. Maybe especially if it feels a little scary. Maybe especially if it seems like we might be bumping into a part of ourselves that we're going to have to let go of. But this practice of inquiry has a reward. It doesn't just have this bad side, the scary side, right? There's a lot of stuff I didn't want to see, and I worked really hard not to see, right? That my marriage needed to end. That was my anniversary. I'm basically at my anniversary of leaving the farm, which has been really interesting to have a lot of stuff come up, but I didn't want to see that. I didn't want to admit that. And it was scary, and it's been hard, and it's still hard. But what he talks about, I can 100% vouch for, that this experience of the unconscious dissolves when brought into the conscious. That experience is so freeing, and the freedom feels really positive. The ability to say, I see the truth now, and to feel and trust the truth, the isness of that source of reality, feels good. And this point that the mind needs something so that it feels adequate, these very advanced pieces of machinery we have here, right? The very things that get in the way when we meditate. I've experienced this. It becomes quiet. It does. Because it feels like I did it. I did a good job. I did my inquiry practice. And so a lot of what we're going to be doing this month is using our really smart brains and using our reason and logic, but also making sure that all of that is a part of this bigger exploration and play, and to realize that the mind is not inventing anything. As we explore the coordinates, everything that we explore already exists. We're just dissolving the obstacles, the boundaries, the false walls, which keep us from seeing the truth and keep us from connecting directly to the source and the sources that are always here. And I'll just close this quote. When the mind is quiet, we come to know ourselves as the pure witness. We withdraw from the experience and the experiencer and stand apart in pure awareness, which is between and beyond the two. The personality based on self-identification, imagining oneself to be something, I am this, I am that continues. But only as part of the objective world. Its identity with the witness snaps. And so that's what we're practicing as we prepare for the inquiry work, is standing as the witness, which is what meditation prepares us for. And really we can kind of get there through all these different practices that we do. But that consciousness and that witness space is in and of itself a kind of source, right? A primary source, your awareness. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So I mentioned the Tao Te Ching. The Tao Te Ching is responsible for a lot of my personal understanding of what a source is. And basically the Tao could be considered the name for the source, the original source. And there are a lot of different names for this original source. You could call it the universe itself. You could call it nature. You could call the original source, of course, God. Many people do. And as I'll put up this other Nisargadatta quote, but he basically says, right, when we personalize a source, in our meditation today, we chose a guru, right? People who do guru worship, right? They basically have come to see the Tao, or the all, or the universe, or the origin. They see the reflection of that in a personalized source, in one teacher or one deity. And then can have a relationship with that source that feels kind of personal. Right? This is the heart of bhakti, how you practice bhakti, devotion. As you choose a being, basically, that you want to totally revere. And because they represent for you this isness, this wonderfulness of source, you can then interact with them, or interact with your statue of them, or interact with their name by chanting it in a devotional way, and that this devotion takes us to our goal. So for me, as I've been contemplating for myself over the years, what am I showing up to honor when I practice? The personalized never worked for me. I'm not going to go into this story today, but I'd be happy to go into it further at some point. But you know, I've had my share of disillusionments with gurus, with beings that presented in a certain way, and you know, let everyone bow to them and give them gifts, and yet didn't seem to actually back that up in the way that in the ethics through which they moved through the world. And I'm also somebody who, I love all spiritual practice. I love all religious ceremonies. I eat it up. And I found myself traveling and being in all these different spaces, and in each one I feel at home. And at the same time, I don't feel totally at home. And so I've come back around to finding that my primary sources, the ones that I'll be quoting throughout this time and sharing with you guys, they tend to bring me back to something that is less personalized. But that may not be right for you, right? You have to really investigate for yourself what really resonates, what's your path. Each one is valid. But for me, the teachings of the Tao Te Ching and the teachings of Nisargadatta and some other teachers that I'll share with you with this video, they help me get back to a source, which essentially for me, the word that works the most simply is nature. They just bring me back to nature. The nature of reality, the nature of myself. The other night, as I was writing this talk, I was sitting on my stoop, and it was a warm night, and I heard the first peepers of the year. The little frogs you hear at this time. And I was, wrapped up in making this talk, and I just stopped and I softened and I let myself become more available. It was almost like my ears opened up and I could hear the peepers, and I could hear all these other sounds of other insects and things that are coming to life as it's spring. I noticed that Venus is like really, really huge right now and is right above. And I felt my connection to that. I tried to open my crown and feel the connection to the stars. And I felt myself arrive again and felt myself actually kind of tear up, because I have this direct connection, because I live in this world of beauty. The source of life is always trying to move through me, and my awareness, the witness, is what meets that. It's what embraces all the sounds and sensations and feelings that indicate I am alive. I'm in a place, in a time, in a body. And this is the miracle, and this is the gift. And so to me, that's nature. And I'm connecting with it all the time. And when I need to drop into my practice, it's as simple as that for me. How can I be the witness meeting life directly? Now, what gets in the way between the witness, and between having this experience of witness with just life, raw life, with nature? We have obstacles, we have stories, we have this brilliant mind, which comes up with all of this stuff in between. It's usually, we experience something and we make a whole story about it. Oh, the last time that I heard the peepers, I was still at the farm. That was a year ago, right? I could go on a whole journey. But then the exercise was to come back directly. No. These peepers, this moment, these ears right now, hearing. And so for me, that's a lot of how I've been translating the practice into something I can do throughout the day, connecting directly to my sources. And again, for me, nature is a word that works really well. Universe is a word that works really well. Personalized gurus and deities doesn't work as well for me. But explore for yourself. Now, these obstacles are also part of nature, it turns out. But the obstacles to us being with what is and being directly with our sources, being in that state of trust that we're part of something bigger. The obstacles to that are the path. These are what are going to arise and as we journal or as we explore. And like I said at the top of this talk, everything that we're doing here, especially the first few weeks, is about relationships. And so I will say, as you're doing your inquiry and the obstacles come up, the stories, the difficulties, as you're meditating and the obstacles come up, as you're doing your movement practice, if you're joining for those sessions and you find there's a sticky place in the body or an injury, right? These obstacles that come up, the things that keep us from just being in that kind of total, complete belonging to the now and the here, the obstacles that arise to that are giving us information. They are our teachers as well. They are our gurus as well. And so I'm going to invite you to relate to everything that arises throughout this journey as a source, as a teacher, as a guide. And I'll be giving you more tools for working with that as we go forward. I want to share a little bit from the Tao Te Ching to wrap up the talk. In the beginning was the Tao, right? And so here Lao Tzu is talking about sources. In the beginning was the Tao. All things issue from it. All things return to it. To find the origin, trace back the manifestations. When you recognize the children, you will find the mother and be free of sorrow. There's more. He's basically talking about the obstacles, judgments, desires, a troubled heart. And then he says, seeking into darkness is clarity. Knowing how to yield is strength. Use your own light and return to the source of light. That is called practicing eternity. I'll say just a couple other things and then kind of wrap up the sense of the Tao. But I'm gonna give you guys a bunch of these that you can look over from the Stephen Mitchell translation, which is my favorite. But the Tao is the ultimate source, and this idea that everything comes from it and everything returns to it, that it is the mother. And yeah, to remember that the peepers and Venus and the sky and the stars and myself, we are the children of the Tao. And so this has been a big piece for me too, huge piece for me. Remembering that I come from source, I am source. And as I start to use my own light, talking about this inquiry practice, right, and this perceiving practice, as I use my own light, right, I'm shining my light around, oh, there's peepers, oh, there's the sky, oh, there's this text I'm going to read, right? Here's, I'm putting my attention in all these different places. Eventually you realize, hold on, what's this thing, right? I'm the source. I'm the light. The Tao gave me a light from the beginning. And so as that, so there's that kind of, that turning inward Nisargadatta is talking about, shining that light on our own light. We kind of go, hold on, I'm it. I'm already it. This is called practicing eternity. The Tao is like a well, used but never used up. It is like the eternal void, filled with infinite possibilities. It is hidden but always present. I don't know who gave birth to it. It is older than God. The Tao is called the Great Mother, empty but inexhaustible. It gives birth to infinite worlds. It is present within you. You can use it any way you want. So this is what I hope that I send you forward with today, is a trust in your own inner light, a trust that you are a child of this magnificent mystery, the inexhaustible, the ceaseless source, and that you can access it in any moment. And it's going to maybe take a little digging. It's going to take some practice, perhaps, but that you are actually built to do it. My original source is this, you know, he calls it sometimes the darkness within the darkness. It's like the dark matter that makes up the majority of our universe, is sometimes how I think of the Tao. And he says the Tao gives birth to the one. The one gives birth to the two. The two gives birth to the three, and the three gives birth to all things. And so when I think about this source, I do, in a sense, you know, I said I didn't really like to personalize my sources, but I will share this. This sense, he also talks a lot about the mother, right? The mother and the father, and the Tao, he calls the mother. But I do, this sense of the one gives birth to the two. The two can often be thought of as what Nisargadatta was talking about, okay? The experiencer and the experience. The awareness, the capacity to experience, which is yin, right? In the Tao, the symbol of the Tao is the yin and the yang. Mother, it's the space of awareness. And then there's the stuff of life, the sound of the peepers, the vision of the planets, the individuals that come in and out of our lives, internet connection unstable, the gurus that are humans as well, right? This is all the stuff of life. And then there's the experience. In the yoga tradition, this is called Purusha and Prakriti. though it's interesting because the genders are swapped, but doesn't matter. The point being, when I honor my sources, and some of you have heard me talk about this a lot, honoring the divine feminine and the divine masculine, which we're all born from the Tao, from the universe. And we'll be working through themes like those kinds of themes, especially in our movement classes. Actually, the movement is a lot about balancing the masculine and the feminine. And we've been living in a very, very young culture for a while that's been pretty imbalanced in terms of the really sort of, instead of the yin and yang being even, it's sort of the yang's been kind of like on top, sort of dominating yin. It's been an unbalanced formation for us energetically. And so as I send you into, digging deeper into some of these quotes that I've offered and digging into the prompts and really looking for yourself, what are my sources? What am I connecting to? What does this all mean? And make space for the darkness. Make space for the non-doing. We haven't been trained so well in this. And so be patient with yourself as you relearn, as you remember how to be in the more yin states. Let the answers to these questions come to you. We're doing searching, we're definitely doing, we're giving a lot to occupy this mind. But remember that the real true answers are going to come in those moments of surrender. Our sources reconnect us with trust, because they're huge, they're real. The Tao, the Tao can't be hurt. Awareness can't be hurt. Life can't actually be hurt. So once we develop that trust and we start to be able to connect to our sources through our practices, surrender becomes available. We learn that if we're really connecting to the right stuff, the personal will can release. And we will be, in our effortlessness, we will suddenly be held by this much greater force. Okay, that's the talk for this week. Thank you so much for being here. I will take questions if anybody has any questions that they would like to ask today. You can either type it into the chat box or unmute yourself.